All right. Good morning, Doug. Today, there's so many different things we could talk about, but we've spent a little bit of the time this morning already, just kind of you and I rambling individually on, or just us on different topics. And you did mention something earlier in our conversation that I think is worth digging into a little further, and that is that you had a very interesting dream last night. Now, dreams are not really a topic of conversation for this channel typically, but I think this one is interesting. Dreams do tell us a little bit about how our subconscious is feeling, if nothing else.
Yes, it's true. Ever since, at least since the days when I think it was David interpreted the Pharaoh's dream about 7 fat cows and 7 lean cows and so forth. Yeah, so people like dreams, and Freud got into dreams a lot. And dreams are kind of interesting when you can remember them. I usually can't remember mine, quite frankly. But so last night, I had a disturbing and long-lasting dream. And it was especially disturbing because when I woke up from this nightmare, and then I'm awake, lying in the bed, and I'm still thinking, wait a minute, this dream is still continuing. It became a waking dream. And then I went back to sleep again. And so what was the dream? Okay. And the dream was basically the whole world has been reset for a year now. And I'm not liking it. I mean, even in my rather privileged position, I mean, my life has not, it's not like I'm living in a small apartment in a big city where you're cramped up like a hog in a 2x3 pen being fed for the slaughter. I mean, that's what it must feel like if you're in a small apartment in a big city that's locked down and you're not really supposed to go out. And if you do go out, most everything's closed and so forth. So I'm not in that kind of, but I'm thinking to myself during this dream is, wait a minute, this has gone on a year and actually it's getting worse. Very few places have loosened up from this COVID hysteria. Some places are locking down again. And most of these governments around the world are showing no inclination to let go of the stranglehold because, listen, the people that go into government like to control other people. That's why they go into government. So anyway, this dream was disturbing and it ranged into all kinds of things, not just the fact that, you know, we're locked down with the COVID thing, but as the financial collapse evidences itself over the next year, and I really think this is the year, finally. There have been so many things along the line that could have put us over the edge, but didn't. But this year, I think they've kind of pulled out all the stops. I'm thinking, gee, any financial assets you have, any assets you have at all, it may turn out they're not really yours. Like the people in Cyprus found 5 years ago. They thought they had a bank account, and it turned out that everything they had above there, it was 100,000 euros, that it was, well, basically gone. So gone. Same thing can happen to your, you know, and with the Corsian thing with MF Global, was it?
Yep.
The commodity firm, a clearing member of the exchange. Corsian, who was the ex-governor of Virginia, basically stole the money, misallocated it criminally, got off. A lot of people lost a lot of money. You don't own anything there. It's your stock brokerage account. All you have is a computer printout, and you don't actually own the shares. You can't even get the certificates anymore. So really, you don't own anything, quite frankly. And of course, this quotation from this lunatic Klaus Schwab interwove itself a couple of times. Strange, I remember so much about this. In 10 years, you'll own nothing and you'll be happy. You know, so it really seems like we're being transported into the Lord of the Rings, where the Black Riders are coming forth from Mordor. And it's serious. I mean, you can forget about living a pleasant little life as a hobbit in the Shire. I mean, you're going to have, bad guys looting and pillaging, and there's not much you can do about it. Even fighting them is very, very hard. I was thinking then, of course, my dream went into, I read a lot about World War II, more about, frankly, history and wars in particular, because after all, war is a mainstay of history. It's a major part of history. Seeing what happened when Germany collapsed at the end of World War II, and you were just an average German citizen. You didn't know from nothing, just like, well, you supported your country, and that happened to be the national. Anyway, it didn't matter. With the Americans on one side and the Soviets coming in on the other side, there was a good chance you were going to be killed or brutalized, your house burned down, everything stolen that the soldiers could carry away, and you're left with nothing. I mean, this kind of stuff has been going out throughout human history. And, it just kind of all came together to me in this waking dream, and then dreaming dream, waking dream. It was horrible that we may be at a stage now where everything that we've come to know as Americans living in a leave it to beaver, father knows best kind of society is going to be washed away in the next few years. So anyway, horrible dream, but it kind of brought me up short. I'm thinking, if I'm having this dream and my life hasn't changed much here out in the country where people do things for me, I get everything that I want. I mean, it's kind of idyllic, quite frankly. But what about people that are living in the cities in small apartments, which is most people, statistically, most people? I mean, is it a powder keg at this point?
Well, I think that probably this week it's not a powder keg because most people are receiving stimulus checks this week. So, it's a good week for everybody. And there's probably a lot of relief that some people are feeling. And there's also, they do seem like you said things are getting worse, not getting better. And I think that's true. And I'd like to go into that more, but I think because a lot of places are relaxing some of the restrictions that exist, that it makes it, can feel like to people that, oh, okay, we're coming out of it. It doesn't feel like the pressure is increasing more and more. I mean, you have some places are opening more and more now, and or at least in little ways, and people just got paid all this week. And I think that those things are making people feel like it's like a pressure release valve. It feels like from people, at least for a little bit. But you say things are getting worse. And what are the indicators that you see that things are getting worse?
Well, I'm asking myself, historically, the time for rioting is during the summer when the weather's good. And I'm wondering, what are the guys in back of BLM and Antifa, what are they planning on this summer? Or maybe nothing, because Biden's in office and he's going to be deconstructing the economy from the top. But still, these guys, want to do stuff. They're basically unemployed because they're not suitable for any kind of productive employment. So are we going to have riots again this summer? I don't know. It's quite possible, because as the standard of living goes down, and it might be set off by a stock market collapse too, besides, or it might be set off by inflation on a retail level really exploding and people get unhappy, or it might be set off by what set off the Arab world almost 10 years ago. It started with some Tunisian vendor complaining about some cop, I think, coming to shake him down because the price of wheat and God knows what was really moving up. The commodities were running away back then. And one thing led to another. It got out of control. There were revolutions all over the Arab world, color revolutions, very sad. And interestingly, all the commodities, I'm talking wheat, corn, soybeans, but they're not the only ones, are like vertical, like gone vertical over the last couple of months. And that's going to be reflected in costs at the grocery store. And oil is moving back up again. It's, what is it, about 60 bucks as we speak. So that could be it. It could be higher interest rates. Could be a collapse in the bond market. There could be all kinds of things that make the rest of this year may seem like it's getting better because they're letting people out of their 2x3 fattening cages, but maybe not. I don't know. Anyway,
it doesn't seem COVID restrictions. Doesn't seem like the COVID restrictions are really ending either. I mean, it almost seems like to me that they're entering a new phase. They're entering a new phase where vaccinations is going to be the standard, or free movement of people. And then there's a lot of, we've talked about this idea of the vaccine passport or green pass, where you can allows you to travel internationally more openly. But it also seems like they've been testing in Israel. Allows you access to the grocery store, and it allows you access to concerts or the theater or things like that. And it does, there's just so much that's been invested in the development of that technology from the airlines through the government of China, through the Global Economic Forum. It's hard to imagine that isn't going to be rolled out. But, first it seems like we're getting a little bit of reprieve from some of the restrictions that existed. But it doesn't seem to me that that's ending. I mean, we've been monitoring. I shared with you, my assistant keeps track of every week countries' statuses in terms of whether or not you could travel across the borders. You have to be a citizen to go there. Or what other restrictions are there in terms of testing or whatever. And those numbers are not getting. They shift a little bit. Which countries are more tight and which countries are loose, but fundamentally the trend since December is just tightening, almost everywhere.
I saw that when you sent it to me. Yes, that was very interesting. And speaking from quiet, backward, low population little Uruguay, my housekeeper informs me that since they've discovered a COVID case, not a sick kid, but they're always testing everybody down here. They found a kid that's got the COVID virus. They wouldn't know unless they tested it. Maybe it's a false positive. So anyway, they've closed down all the schools in this part of the country. And now our kid has to stay home, which is a nuisance for her because she'd like the kid to go out and play with his friends as opposed to hang around all day. So even here in this backward little country, it's like one step forward and now two steps back. So when's it going to end? Well, of course, these viruses, it's the nature of a virus to go viral, and at some point it's going to burn itself out. But I don't want to take that vaccine because I don't want to feel like I'm a guinea pig. I don't like to ingest potentially dangerous foreign substances anyway. Who likes to be stuck with a needle, which might not have consequences for months, years, who knows? So, and this is a political thing more than a medical thing, which makes me especially suspicious. So, I mean, hell, maybe I'm not going to be going anywhere. Maybe I'll have to get used to it. Don't like that idea very much.
Well, one of the things you were telling me about your dream was that so you see all these different problems, the financial problems, the travel and the lockdown problems, and they seem like they're all kind of closing in, is kind of the way I felt like you described it. And you said, but where do you go? Like, there's no safe place to go. There's no obvious exit from any of it. And I think, and you weren't talking about that physically when you said it, although that's probably true also, but you're talking about in terms of where you can even put your assets, where you can be sure that they're not going to be confiscated, or that they're not going to be, you're not just going to disappear, into the ether. And, and you talked about Cyprus, what happened there with people with their bank accounts, but could you just explain a little bit more about your feeling that like there isn't a safe place, there's safe havens just are gone?
Yes, exactly. Yes, it actually gets worse because, You think that at least if you have a weapon, you can defend yourself. But of course, at some point in the near future, and who knows how they're planning on doing this because they know they're going to get some serious resistance. What happens when Biden, or probably Harris, because I suspect that Biden's not going to last very long. He's just too old and senile and tired and sick to continue. He's just a placeholder for a really crazy radical, which is Harris, who came out of nowhere. Strange, I mean, of all people. So what's going to happen when they try to confiscate people's guns in stages? And first you got to register, blah, blah, blah. So then what's going to happen? Okay, that could get ugly. That could get nasty. That could be the catalyst that sets things off. There's so many things like that. And, you got to ask yourself, what are you going to do when the Geheimstaatspolizei show up at your door and want to see your guns to confiscate them? Will you have buried them already? Or, and there's risks to doing that too. I mean, it's just, but there's no place you can go in the world, quite frankly. I mean, some countries are mellower than others, but you get exactly the same kind of people that get into government everywhere in the world. And that's why they're all working in concert, it seems. It seems like a conspiracy because they're all doing the same thing for no good reason, as we've discussed in the past. This whole COVID thing is going to go down as one of the big scams of world history, a big embarrassment sometime in the future. I don't know when that is. So yeah, it's really quite concerning. It seems like there's no way out. You can insulate yourself by having being in the right place and having enough money. But then, as I said, you may not really have any money because that can all go. Mm-hmm. And what seems like the right place 1 minute can overnight turn into the wrong place. And then you can't travel because of, who knows what's going to happen with your passport. Your passport is government property. You don't own it. It says it right on the passport. This is US government property. So forget about a visa to go someplace else, plus your medical visa. This is getting really serious. I hope I'm overblowing this. It's just that it actually seems realistic that anything can happen at this point.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm not even talking about the coming war with China, which I think is definitely in the cards. I mean, that's just the way things are lining up.
There's so many, and I mean, you say you hope you're exaggerating what happens, but it seems to me like if you could be underestimating it, or at least underestimating the way that actually appears in the world, because there's no way to like totally stand aside and have this and avoid what's coming. It seems like to me. I mean, it hasn't worked so far. Even people who have gone to who've been in other countries to try and avoid, the COVID rules or whatever have not been able to totally escape them. I mean, there's just been degrees of restrictions, I guess, but it seems to me that you have it's hard to know about how bad the state lockdown is going to be, like how bad the control grid that they are rolling out, how extreme that will be globally. It's hard to understand that, but it is not hard to understand, I think, that there are really serious economic consequences coming, and that's a ticking time bomb that's been ticking for a really, really long time, and that it really feels we're at a point where it could really blow at any moment. Now, it could also take another couple of years. This could be the crack up boom time we've talked about before, where maybe all this new money drive up all kinds of asset prices and make things expensive, but like it could keep the party going potentially longer. But the fact that it's a ticking time bomb, I don't think is denied very much by anyone anymore.
I think you're right. And of course, as far as the crack up boom is concerned, if they didn't just send $1,400 or whatever the number is if they sent $10,000, I mean, a bigger number, and put it in everybody's bank account, it would be party time. I mean, people would just buy everything they thought that they ever wanted. And if they can't afford it, they take out a loan for, the rest of it. So it would be massive overconsumption. It would be party time if the government did that. And, it would feel pretty good because it feels great to live above your means for a while. Maybe they'll do that. That's possible. So, yeah. But, actually, even a more serious problem that we've discussed before, but I've read a few things recently about elite high schools in the US, of which there are about 1,000. And of those 1,000, there are about 100 that are like super elite. And then the author of the article, who'd done some research and used to be a teacher at one of these super elite high schools, talked about what goes on with the teachers. And they're all really hardcore lefties. Now, why is that? Because if you're not a hardcore lefty, you're going to be kind of ostracized by your other teachers there. They've actually taken over. So you can't have, with 50 teachers, like 2 or 3 conservatives. I mean, they're basically out because they'll be shunned, by the others. And the parents who are disturbed by the things that they know that their kids are being taught, and the fact that a school with 1,000 kids is supposed to have 10, not 1, but 10 diversity officers. And, the fact that if a professor, this happened at Georgetown, actually, I think, shamefully, stupidly, my own alma mater, where I misallocated 4 years of time and a lot of money. Oh, well, I didn't have good counsel when I was going to an elite high school, actually. But things were different back in the 60s. They weren't nearly as serious as they are now. But where she commented that, I've got a number of Black kids that have been put into my law school class because of affirmative action. And it's a problem because these kids just are not ready for the material. They shouldn't be here. And you know what happened to her? It wasn't good that she, rolled over on her back and profusely apologized for having said something that makes people feel uncomfortable. She was fired, end of story, for making that observation, which she thought was factual and was proven by the grades that these affirmative action kids were getting. So this is all in the background. This is like, big picture subtext. So I don't see anything good going on.
You talked about that being even worse than all the other things we mentioned before this. Why do you think that this education piece is even worse? Or what do you think that this education component portends for the future?
Because, everything can turn around in the real world, but when you corrupt somebody's mind, it sticks with you for a long time. There's a reason why St. Ignatius Loyola, who founded the Jesuits, and Lenin, maybe Lenin read St. Ignatius, or maybe he just observed it on his own. Entirely possible, both smart guys. They both said, something on the order of, give me the first 7 years of a kid's life and I will have directed the rest of his life with the ideas that, are put into him for as far as right and wrong. And you can overcome this because I was subjected to all these things. But there's not many people I can talk to personally. I mean, all my friends are frankly like me or you, and we are not even a rounding error on the general population. And it's a real problem, I think, for a lot of people that I meet these days. Well, I don't meet many people these days, but people that have written in about these conversations we have, it's that a lot of people say that they don't have anybody they can talk to, because if they talk to people about what they think is reasonable and what they think, they're going to be ostracized, they're going to be snubbed, they're going to be shunned because it's so incorrect to think these things. So no, this is a really big deal, long term.
Do you think that? Why do you think that parents you'd think would not allow their kids to be subjected to abuse in this way? Like they really are. Where you have to. I mean, some of the critical race theory stuff, where the white students have to acknowledge their responsibility, for the suppression of minorities or the oppression of minorities. They really they formalize these things in many of these schools, and I've seen it myself with my own kids. That this stuff is happening, and I just wonder how. I really thought that the red line for most people in America would be when somebody starts to actually assault your child, but it doesn't seem to be. Either they're just totally ignorant of it, or they just feel like it's not so bad. And I don't know. Are you surprised by this as much as I am?
Yeah, surprised. I'm not sure that's exactly my emotion. I'm certainly shocked, disgusted, appalled. But the parents of kids that go to these elite schools, they disapprove, but they actually get talking tos from administrators and are told that maybe it's a great privilege for your kid to be here and pay us $50,000 a year, so we can all get high six-figure salaries for corrupting them. Maybe, since the line to get into this elite school is so long, maybe you want to take your kid, and go elsewhere. So the parents are really intimidated because they think that in order to get into Princeton or Yale or the equivalent, you have to start out with, Georgetown Prep or Dalton or one of these places. So it's a self-reinforcing sick system. And my guess is because the teachers' unions are so strong and the powers that be don't want to see people come up that don't think the way they do, that maybe now that homeschooling is kind of re-blossoming in this country, maybe they'll try to shut it down somehow if it gets too popular. It's not just some oddball Christians on the side. Okay, let them go. Who cares? This is a lot of people now are taking their kids and trying to homeschool. But the thing is it's tough to homeschool a kid because of the way society's evolved. I mean, both parents work. So when you have a chance to actually spend time with your kid and homeschool them after you work and commute, it's a problem. I mean, it's almost like the society is going to have a reset of some type.
Yep. And one of the worries with if you're brainwashing the youth in the way that they really are being indoctrinated at this point, I'm just reminded of the Cultural Revolution and, Miles Redguard. And, it was this done by the youth. I mean, basically kids between, 9 and 15 years old were basically, sentencing people to abuse and punishment and death, even totally unchecked by any government. It was driven by the youth who felt quite empowered to, to make these sort of decisions to get out, to end the three olds, and see that kind of vitriol in kids with brainwashing.
Yeah, there's a certain age when you are energetic enough and enthusiastic enough, et cetera, to go out and be a street fighting man. So yeah, of course.
Yeah, it's concerning. Well, tomorrow we have a very interesting conversation happening with James Kunstler, who is an author and a very interesting human in a bunch of regards. And he wrote, among other things, a book called A World Made by Hand, which is a novel essentially about what the future might look like. And it'll be really interesting to get his take on what he thinks this is all taking us toward. And I think his views might be more radical than even yours is, Doug, if I recall.
Yeah, if you guys out there in listener land have stuck with us so far, you'll definitely want to listen to Jim Kunstler's hour with us tomorrow, because it'll be he's a fun guy and a radical guy and a thinking guy. So it'll be good. I think it'll be in a class with the one we had with Kolya Spori a few weeks ago.
I think so too. I think so too. Okay, well, we'll leave it here for today, and then we'll pick back up with Jim tomorrow.
Okay, super.